Hi, welcome to this week's episode. Today we're talking about budgeting, so let's dive in.
The Retirement Readiness Podcast with Tim Regan and Katie Umland, presented by Prairie View Wealth Partners. Live your 2 life.
So specifically, I think we're kind of wrapping up toward the holiday season. So we were kind of thinking, how do we make a holiday budget?
Yeah, well, I think there's lots of things that, we're going to have to come up with better topics, because I think one time we talked about what to do tax-wise at the end of the year and budgeting. These are not exciting, fun
it doesn't
topics,
sound
right?
fun. We should have just said, today we're talking about Santa.
Yeah, yeah. Let it rip. And I think, though, that the budgeting conversation goes to a lot of different directions. I think you've got specifically here towards Christmas, you have parents that are thinking, all right, how do I squeeze that into my budget? But I also think you have grandparents that are trying to figure out, how much should I give the kids and grandkids and what's an appropriate amount?
I was going to say, it's not always what can we afford? It's afford isn't necessarily the problem.
No, exactly.
How do we divvy it up, or what do we do?
Yeah. At our house, we've talked about it frequently with the kids, where we're fortunate where no doesn't have to be the answer, right? There are things that we can afford to do with our kids, but sometimes that makes it almost a harder or a different problem, I guess.
Champagne problems.
Yeah. First world problems for sure. And so when you start thinking about how do I do that? And how do I set those budgets? It's to your point, it's not just can I afford it or how do I afford it, but it's also if I can, or if I have the ability to do some things, how do I make sure that I keep it within the bounds that I want? And
just Alex and I are kind of starting to have those conversations now that the kids are getting a little older and understand more what they're getting and what presents are. Dylan desperately wants a football helmet, a baseball helmet, a hockey helmet.
Of course.
He wants a real, and they all have to be real. He wants a real goalie stick. He wants a real goalie helmet. Could we go out and buy them for him? Yes. He's 2.
Yes.
Do we need to buy him the real hockey stick?
Probably not
today.
Well, in there too, it's do you want to then hire a drywaller and a painter, and because those things must get used? They're not just
coming next.
Yeah, that's right.
But just kind of outlining okay, maybe what do we want their gift experience to look like?
Well, and it's
budgeting
funny,
it from that perspective.
For each family, that's all things that they have to work out on their own, obviously. But for Sarah and I know one of the things we always wrestled with was, okay, they have another 25 Christmases that I'm going to be buying them presents. While they're
here?
Yeah. What's the upside here? If I get them everything the first year,
exactly.
Where does it go? And then even to, the kids, I always, the analogy that is always in my mind, I know we've talked about it on the show before, is that analogy of if you give a kid $20 and send them to Walmart and say, you can buy anything in the store, they're going to be miserable. They're going to look all day long, walk out with nothing. Can't decide. But if you said you have $20 and you can spend it on this rack, they're going to find something they love. They're going to be excited about it and love it. And it's the same thing kind of with Christmas. The kids get tired of opening presents after present number 5-ish. And they're like, everything else after that is overload. I'm not happy. I'm not going to play with it really. And so it's finding that right balance as you go.
And there's so many things that Dylan was interested in already, for last Christmas. We're yes, he would if we got him a hockey stick, let's say, but if we wait 2 more years and give it to him when he's 4, he's probably going to really love it. Yep. So yes, he would like it now, but maybe we should, or vacations.
Yes.
Oh, he would love to go to Disney World when he's 2, but is he going to love it more when he's 5? We should probably just there's so many things you want to do and want to give him. But
100%.
Okay, let's wait on this.
Well,
we don't have to do it all this year
And from our perspective, a lot of times what we see is parents start to get themselves almost into an issue with that, where once you set the bar at a certain level, you either have to continue living up. The minimum is live up to that bar.
Right.
But usually every year they're trying to do a little bit better than that bar. Mm-hmm. And so even with the Disney vacation, there are times that even parents that have very good incomes, very good discretionary income, overspend. And next thing you know, now they're trying to pay off Disney this year from last year.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, where's vacation this year again? And it's not a good cycle either. And so that whole concept of how do I budget and how do I put the right parameters around my spend really is a real deal.
So let's get back to our actual topic of how to create a budget, or what does that look like? Because Alex is always telling me there is no budget for Christmas.
Well, of course.
He has that.
Yes.
He has that opinion that there's a budget for everything else. But Christmas, there's not a budget for Alex.
Well, and for Alex, I mean, Christmas is a deal, right?
Yes, Christmas is quite the deal.
Yes.
So.
Well, and so I think it's hard. So we're going through a process right now, Katie, like kind of like you and I were talking, where even in the Regan house, I call it checkbook leakage, where all of a sudden you don't intend on it, but there are things that are coming out of your checkbook that you were not intentional about. And all of a sudden you look up and you're like, holy cow, for the last number of months, we spent how much money? And that wasn't an intentional spend. And so we're going through this process now, even in our house, where, it's a concept called $0 budgeting. And so really what you do is you start at zero and then you add back only the things that are necessary to run the house. And so we might sit down and say, okay, the first thing I'm going to do is I have to pay myself. So how much money am I putting into my 401k? How much money am I putting into our emergency fund? How much money am I putting away for the kids' college? What's left is what I have to spend. Now let me add things that are only necessary. I have to pay my mortgage. I have to pay my car payment. Those kinds of things. Now I end up with a number that I get to choose what I want to do with it. That's my true discretionary budget. Too often what happens is it's the opposite. People get this paycheck. They spend it on everything they want. Then they say what's left over. And then they end up in kind of a problem with that. And the question around what is necessary. So right now, the car I have, I'm probably not getting out of that car. But when I go to buy the next car, the question really is it necessary for me to own a Maserati? Probably not. Is it necessary to have a car? Yes. So which car is probably the best thing for me to get? Not what do I want to get, but what do I need to have, so that I can try to keep my spending within those within the appropriate realm.
Well, it's also like, it's so hard to say, I know. Okay. So let me back up. So for Alex and I, Alex is very much like, I don't need that. I don't need that. I don't need that.
Well, could we just start with, this would be on 4 spreadsheets for Alex,
oh,
this
yeah.
budget?
Yes, exactly. He already has this. Yes, he has everything Excel, color coded formulas, but he gets in the very much like, I don't need it. I don't need it. I don't need it.
Yep.
But there's also like, it's okay to.
Yes.
Yes, you don't need it, but it's okay to also
100%, which is why you have to start with I need, then with what's left over. Now you know what you can, right? Because what happens is if I do it the opposite way, maybe I have $100 a month that I can spend on the things I want. Well, if I don't know that that's the number, and I know that number's too low, Katie, right?
Yeah.
Like that will not cover shopping.
No.
But let's say it's $100 a month and I know that I can spend freely. Well, if I know that, now I can kind of say, oh yeah, let's go to dinner, this month because I know that we have that in our budget. If I don't know that, I may choose to spend $150 every month. Mm-hmm. And now that extra 50 is causing me to go backwards. And that obviously I used a low number, but it's scalable on whatever the number is. And what can happen is if I'm not intentional about that, all of a sudden that discretionary spend just starts to creep. And what used to be a $10 a week Starbucks habit turned into a $40 a week Starbucks habit.
Yeah.
And I don't just have Hulu and Netflix. I now have Hulu, Netflix, Paramount Plus, Apple TV.
Yeah.
Just all of this stuff starts to balloon and you end up in a place where you're like, do I really need to have 16 subscriptions to all these?
Exactly.
All these things.
Have created cable again.
Yes. Yes. Sarah and I have been saying that since the dawn
yes.
of cut the cable.
Yeah.
Or because we're like, what's going to happen now? Just wait. You're going to have a company that says, oh, well, we can negotiate on your behalf all of these services,
all of these
bundle all together. And
we're
wait,
back where we started.
I thought that was cable. Yeah. But all the young kids, like my kids' generation, won't have remembered what cable was.
Yeah.
And they're going to think it's a novel
great idea.
Oh, this is so awesome. Look how great this is. It's been there.
Okay. So if you were going to, I guess, okay. So how do people or do you have some ideas of it's starting to be September, October? How do people start kind of getting ready for holiday spending?
Yeah. So the thing is, what can happen many times is I don't see more than, an hour ahead or a day ahead. And so people just don't think about, I've got Christmas coming. What are the steps that I take? And so all of a sudden Christmas is here, or they get to the place where Christmas is coming. I don't want to deal with it. I'm just going to put it to the side, but it's coming no matter what. And then all of a sudden Christmas is here and they didn't set a budget and they didn't set money aside. And all of a sudden I'm spending money that I either shouldn't be or don't want to be. And I end up in a place that I don't intend. And so, our suggestion is start the conversation now before you see those deals that are too good to pass up, and stick to it. So, one of the suggestions,
that's the hard part.
It is the hard part
because you see something that you your kids are going to love, but you've already bought them all their stuff. That's really hard to do.
Well, and so the thing is, if that's you, don't buy all this stuff in October.
Yeah.
Right. Then just wait and say, I'm going to wait to buy it until December.
Yeah.
Because if I buy it in October, I'm going to continue to see stuff. I'm going to overspend.
Keep buying. Forget what you bought it so long ago. You forgot until you start wrapping and you're like, oh, shoot. Yeah.
No, absolutely.
I have a lot of stuff.
Absolutely. Well, I know in our house, one of the things that we always did is we always kept, it was one sheet of paper that had each of the kids' names on it. And then we just went down and we put down we started with, here's what we're thinking we might get. And then we put down what did we get. And what had happened for us was we were able to then kind of put dollar amounts to it. And we said every Christmas, here's how much we want to spend per child, for Christmas. And then it's funny, usually it comes pretty close. Obviously we're not exact, but it comes pretty close, that all the kids are pretty even. But then you're looking, you're like, oh, wait, this one wanted that one really big thing. And so it's going to look like they didn't get a whole lot where the other ones wanted a bunch of little stuff. And so then you have to do some horse trading and that kind of stuff. But by doing that starting, in October and November, then you've got the list. So then when it gets to be December and you're like, oh, crumb, I don't have this. And you're like, oh, wait, no, I already bought 4 other things. I don't need
it. I'll save it for his birthday.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. I'm just curious what you guys think about this. So you say you kind of try to keep everything even, a dollar amount for the kids. Mm-hmm. So let's say, you get one thing on super sale. Yep. Let's say it's a $200 item. You get it for $20. Let's just say, crazy deal. So it's a big item. It looks big, but you only spent $20 on it. Do you give, do you say that's $200 worth?
So for us, the way that we would do that is that gives us fudge, right? So that now I don't have to say I got a $200 item. So I can choose to treat it like a $200 item, or I could choose to treat it like a $20 item, depending on how the other things are looking and coming out. Yeah.
Because that's always on my mind of I got a really good deal. So sometimes I'll say, oh, that means I can get more. Yeah. And then sometimes if I don't have ideas, I'll say oh, well,
I guess we're good.
It's worth 50.
No, exactly. Exactly. Well, and then so the part that's hard is, so if you say, I'm going to make all the dollars the same and you got that big mega deal, you have to come up with crap for the other kid that looks like all this other stuff.
They don't know that. They don't understand that.
Yeah.
Santa does not have mega deals.
Exactly.
So,
well, and there's nothing wrong with, all of your Christmas money not being spent on the things, so let's say that you've got a budget that allows you, and again, pick a number, spend $1,000 per child on Christmas. Well, when they're 2 and 1, $1,000 worth of stuff,
that's insane,
is absolutely bonkers, and they don't need it, want it anyway, right? Because it goes back to after the 5th present, I was kind of done with this anyway. So instead, look and say, all right, yeah, we could spend $1,000, but we're going to buy $250 worth of stuff, and we're going to put $750 away into an account that they can have. And when we start talking about, money for the kids, I typically encourage parents to create 2 pools of money. Create a pool of money that is their account. It's money that they get at Christmas and birthdays and baptisms and confirmations and all that stuff. And then any money you're setting aside, keep that in a separate account. Don't commingle those dollars. And there are a lot of reasons for that, but one of them is that the money that you're putting aside, you should have control over, because you're choosing to give that to the child for whatever purpose you have, whether it's college or a house or whatever. Money that they get as gifts, that's money that was meant for them to spend on what they would want to spend. So rather than trying to sort it out or remember, just keep them separate. You can still choose to let them spend the money or not. They're your kid, so you choose what that is. But it just gives you kind of a clear accounting of it. And so then when I would give the kids money at Christmas, like in lieu of Christmas presents, it goes into their gift account, not inside of the college account, because it was meant to be a gift. And so I know there are a lot of parents that maybe have a different viewpoint on this. There's a lot of times when the kids' cousins and friends and that kind of stuff would get this big pile of money for their birthday, let's say. And then mom and dad would let them take that money, and maybe it's a big pile, maybe it's $100, right? Or $200. Then mom and dad let them take that money. Well, it's their money. It's a gift they got. Go blow it on whatever you want. And they end up with all this tchotchke, candy, like nothingness, right? The kids don't need to have that. And so many times, like in our family, any of that money we put into their present account, their gift account. And consequently, by the time the kids turned 16, they had enough money in there that they could take their half of their money and put half towards a car. I matched the half. And now they got the car at 16 rather than 36 packs of gum.
Your kids also got 36 packs of gum because they went through a long phase of gum and mints.
Yes. Yeah. What do you want for Christmas? Gum and mints.
Gum and mints.
but that kind of is part of the psychology. If you don't let them buy it with their own money, it makes a great Christmas present.
It was a long phase.
Grace even went through that phase where you asked what she wanted, and she wanted maraschino cherries and olives, remember? And pickles. Honestly, we feed our kids. It's not like they're not going hungry. They have to ask for that for their Christmas.
So funny. And Maddie and Timmy, you better get them the exact same flavors. Otherwise, it is going to be
battle royale.
So funny.
It is. And so just some of those budgeting things. It's like before you get it, it's like everything else. Before you get into it, you have to set the budget with what you're comfortable. Otherwise, there are always ways that you can rationalize just a little bit more, and then end up spending money that you're not intending to spend.
So, let's talk about layaway.
Yes. That's a term, a blast from the past, which has come back.
It has come back.
Yeah.
And so I whenever I hear it, I always feel like stay away. Like it always just makes me feel so nervous. Like I want to tell people like, don't do it. Like
layaway is awesome. At least I have not done it recently. Maybe terms are different, but like when I was younger, layaway is a way that you can pay for it on time without the expense of credit. And so you could tell the store, hey, put this on the side and I will buy it. You're laying it away. And I'm going to come in and I'm going to put payments down on it. But I don't have the expense of a credit card. And so
I really didn't know how layaway.
Yeah. And again, I have not used layaway in ages. So the last time I used layaway was when I bought Sarah's wedding ring.
I was going to say Sarah's wedding ring.
Yes. Yes. At the
signs that you shouldn't be getting married at 18.
Yes. I always like to laugh about it. So Sarah and I, as you know, we were engaged and she was in high school and I was my freshman year of college. We're married at 20. Lily's becomes a year after a year after we got married. So 10 days before our first wedding anniversary. And I'm like, somehow this seems like we should be in a trailer at the river eating government cheese, right? Like this is not a recipe for where we're at today. Yeah. Usually we've got 6 marriages and baby daddies and that kind of stuff. But luckily God had a better plan for us. But yeah, so that's the last time I did. And what layaway for me was I said, hey, I want that ring for her. Here is, I don't know, $500. And then every week I come in and give you a little more money before I can have the ring. Which, kind of funny story with that. So I'm going through that program. I didn't really realize I was supposed to go like every week and make a payment. I thought it was just like whenever I wanted to just pop in.
Okay.
And the guy that I bought the ring from, really nice guy. And he called me. I owed just a little bit of money left on the ring. And he called me and said, hey, you might want to come in today and make that final payment. And I thought he was like, it was his kind way of saying, dude, come on, live up, get this done type deal. Went and did that, got the ring. And 2 days later, the store was out of business. And so I know he was looking out for me. He was like,
this 18-year-old kid put all the money he had.
Yeah, exactly.
That's so sweet.
Yeah. And so yes, with layaway, if it's the same, I think that's a better option than let me go swipe
put it on a credit card
that I'm not going to pay it off at the end of the month because now I'm paying the interest at credit card rates.
I guess this is another example of like choose your hard. Like if you really are in a position of you truly have to budget and you have to stick to a budget for Christmas, and it's hard to buy put them on layaway. So you would buy it in October, lay it away until Christmas time. It's hard to do that because you can't keep buying through till Christmas, but it's also very hard to keep buying through Christmas and then suffering the payment consequences.
100%.
So,
and don't get me wrong. I mean, we're talking about, we spend a lot of time talking about spending money and how do I make sure I don't overspend because I feel like I have enough. But I mean, there were lots of years for Sarah and I when that budget was, we can't budge from that because if we do, we are getting ourselves into a position we don't want to be in.
Right. And over what?
Exactly. Over something the kids are going to love for
a week.
Yeah. It's over the moment of them opening it.
Exactly.
Because after that, everything starts going downhill again.
In the buildup of Christmas time and it's the season and.
Yeah, 100%. And so, the same thing holds true then even for grandparents. Our suggestion is have an intention around what your gift giving is. Lily was the first grandchild, like across the board ever, right?
Yeah.
I mean, she had a great grandmother.
So crazy.
A bunch of 4 great grandmothers, 2 regular grandmothers. I mean, and she was the first. And so all of a sudden it's like the floodgates open and it's like everywhere you went was competing with Santa Claus. And you're like, Santa Claus can't even hold up to this because it's so crazy. And I don't know that was intentional. It was love for sure. It was excitement, but I don't know looking back if that would have been an intentional thing. Right. And so, at 2 years old, she doesn't know that 37 of these things were, it got to the point where Sarah and I would take the presents, keep them in our closet and then sprinkle them in throughout the year because it was overwhelming. She just couldn't enjoy it all. And so, as a grandparent, just think about, what am I trying to create? Or do I want to do that? Or do I want to take some of that money and put it aside so they have money later on? Also knowing, even with the kids, if I have money to give to the kids and I want to give them, say, $5,000 each at Christmas time, the first year you do it, it's going to be a surprise. It will be a gift. It will be very grateful. The second year will be less grateful, still grateful, won't be a surprise. By the third year, it'll be an expectation and they will start planning it in their budget. Yeah. Just human nature. And so just think about what am I trying to do here? And if that's what you want to do, great. If it's not though, then let's have a conversation about how to do that different.
So budgeting in general is not either one of our strong suits, meaning we don't like to stick to one.
Oh no, I love it. Like I know my budget when the checkbook says 0, stop spending, right? Like it's,
but I think this time of year, the end of the year, people start like thinking about their next year, what their budget looks like. And so if you have any tips.
Well, really the best, my suggestion is the easiest way to start going through and saying, what does my budget look like? Just pull your credit card statement and pull your checkbook. Because what happens is everything being auto drawn right now, nobody looks anymore. Yeah. How much is your cell phone bill? Yeah. No clue. It auto hits. Right. And so go through and start physically looking at, just take a couple hours, go through the statement. There's not that many transactions, and say, what was this? And did we want to spend it? And why do I always show this coming up? I thought about it the other day. Sarah and I have the unlimited package at the car wash. That bill has gone up every year since we've had it. And now I'm looking, I'm like, we spend $150 a month in car washes.
Oh my gosh, it's insane.
Is this what we want to spend in car washes?
Yeah.
Now, I get my car washed 4 times a week, and I like having a clean car. And so maybe I choose to make that decision still. Yeah. But it still has to be a decision. Intentional,
like you said. Exactly. Not just it's happening to you and you don't even. Yeah.
Well, and for me, the trade-off is I would much rather say I'm not going to drink Starbucks anymore.
Right. Yeah.
And get my car washed than I would say I'm going to get rid of the car wash to go get Starbucks. And so it's that value proposition.
And it's so funny. Once you start looking at things like you're spending, you start realizing like, oh yeah, I did go to Starbucks a lot last week. Like it's passive. You don't even think about it. And then you're suddenly like looking at everything differently. Like, oh my gosh, is this Starbucks worth me not getting this other item? And like, ooh, it's not.
No, exactly. And what happens is, everybody sees that dollar I'm spending today in today's dollars. But in reality, if you didn't spend it, it would grow. It would stay in some account. It would earn some interest. And so if you think about the 20-year value of that, my $5 Starbucks just cost me $20 because in 20 years I could have $20 instead of the $5. And all of a sudden that just changes kind of the mentality around, holy cow. Well, if that's one, if I do that 100 times this year, all of a sudden I'm at serious money for my Starbucks addiction. It is an addiction.
And like you said, if you
they're drug dealers, right? Like they get you hooked on the sauce.
They do. If you're choosing that, fine. Yeah. It's just that you want to be choosing it.
It's just a choice. And that even goes back to, Katie, we talk a lot about dad and, so, which by the way, we should mention that again, that we are brother and sister. We haven't said that in a while. Yeah. I actually had a client in the office the other day that said, you should say that because for a lot of episodes, I was like, they know each other too much. He's having an affair with her.
Oh, geez.
I'm like, she's like, and then you said one time that she's my sister. I'm like,
oh, thank goodness. I can trust him again.
Yeah. It's like, oh, thank goodness, or that's gross. Yeah. Like, But anyway, but dad used to like when he would go out to eat, his value proposition was like, he bought by the pound. Yeah. Right. Like he all the time. I got 2 pork chops, mashed potatoes, green beans. I got a cup of soup. It was $5. Yeah. I'm like, yeah.
And how good was it? Were you puking all night?
Exactly. Where Sarah and I typically would enjoy rather to have maybe spend some more and have a nicer dinner than buy by the pound. But because of that means you have to look and say, okay, how many times are we going to take the kids out in a month? How many times are we going to go out in a month rather than going and having a before dinner drink and then a glass of wine at dinner? Maybe we cut that down to just having the glass of wine at dinner or whatever, because now all of a sudden that does become more expensive. And if I let that checkbook leakage continue, I may end up again just spending more money than I intended.
I think we're having like talking leakage. I think we've rambled a lot this episode.
We did.
All over. Is that?
So land the plane.
So, yeah.
So
you can land it. I can never land it.
So go through and be intentional with your spending. Start with $0. Start adding in, here's what I have to spend. I shouldn't say it. Start by saying, here's how much I'm going to pay myself. How much goes to 401k? How much goes to emergency fund? How much goes to kids' college? Then say, here's what I have to spend. My mortgage, my electric bill, whatever's left now becomes your discretionary budget, and now be intentional with how you spend that. And leading up to Christmas, make sure that you set that budget. Say, here's how much we want to spend total, how much we want to spend on each child, and make sure that you start sticking to that. And if you need to make some adjustments before you get there, whether it is cut out an expense that you have to save it up or use layaway or what have you, just make sure that you don't end up January 1 with a fat credit card bill that you can't afford to pay off.
I'm getting back into the leakage, but as you were saying that, I was also thinking that it's not just gifts at Christmas time that everything gets more expensive. Yeah. And I think that that's maybe something that people can forget to budget for.
Yep.
That it just feels like, oh, this is, it's just regular spending, but it's really not when you're hosting a party, potentially. You're going to a party, several parties where you're bringing
a bottle of wine,
or a dish or a present, anything. Or there's a grab bag there, or there's several things. Maybe you're buying new decorations. Maybe you're buying Christmas lights. You're putting up Christmas lights, having your Christmas lights on all the time. Like there's little things that also like you don't think to budget for and you still have to pay for. Yeah. So, and that, I think that could maybe be a trap that people
remembering that once you do it once, that is an ongoing expense virtually forever. You are not going to pay a company to come out and put Christmas lights all over your house, make it look outstanding, and then choose not to do that next year. Right. And so just know that once you say yes to one, it's saying yes probably almost indefinitely. And just thinking through, is that really the decision I want to make? This isn't a $1,500 come out and put lights on my house decision. This is a $1,500 a year for 30, 20 40, years that, all of a sudden it's maybe something I didn't mean.
Yeah.
So, all right.
Okay.
Plane has landed. I think we covered some kid stuff. Dylan is excited about beating up the walls in the new house with his real football and helmet and hockey stick.
Exactly. This we're filming at Halloween time. So every morning he tells me what he's going to be for Halloween, and it's different every morning. So
well, that's cool. So has he gotten off of it being his older cousin?
Yeah. For a while he just said he wanted to be Emmett for Halloween. Then it shifted to just general hockey player. Dinosaurs, Chase from Paw Patrol. So
he's got the gamut covered.
we have quite a bit.
Well, just make sure that you don't get into like we can be multiple things. Like in the morning we can dress up as this, and we go out and we do costume changes. Yeah, because once you start, you will never go back. And so
and now it's 10 costumes every
Halloween. Yeah, for sure. So
okay, awesome. So for more resources, head to the website pv-wp.com.
The Retirement Readiness Podcast with Tim Regan and Katie Umland. Presented by Prairie View Wealth Partners. Live your 2 life. Learn more at pv-wp.com. And while you're at it, don't forget to subscribe to the Retirement Readiness Podcast on your preferred podcast platform.